Earth is the homeworld of the human race, and the capital planet of the Earth Alliance. It is currently one of the most influential worlds in its region of the galaxy. Located in Sector 100 by 17 by 3, Earth was the third planet in the Sol system, between the orbits of Venus and Mars. During the Third Age, Earth possessed a thick oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere and a 1G gravitational pull. About 71% of the surface was covered with saltwater oceans, with the remainder consisting of 7 continents and diverse environments ranging from frozen ice caps and barren deserts, to forests, grasslands, and swamps, to urbanized regions. Collectively, these environments were part of a rich and diverse biosphere. The planet had an orbital period slightly over 365 planetary rotations, days, each lasting about 24 hours. Earth was itself orbited by Luna, its only natural satellite, with an orbital period of a little over 27 days. History. The First Age. The planet that would eventually become known as Earth was first formed around 4.5 billion years before the Third Age, with life first forming about a billion or so years later. After eons of massive changes, great upheavals and numerous mass extinctions, Earth eventually bore a race of bipedal primates that would become the ancestors of the human race, some 3 million years before the Third Age, a period that would later become known as the First Age of mankind. It was around this time that the Vorlons, an ancient race of first ones, were exploring this region of space when they discovered this species and, like they have done on many other worlds, begin to manipulate the young race to see them as beings of light. After another 1.5 million years, they returned to take away samples and individuals from the pre-human species later known as Homo erectus, with which to create their Nephilim, the templates from which they would harvest the telepath gene. Around this time, the first ones banished a group of incorporeal entities from their midst, casting them down to primitive Earth where they were bound so that they could never escape. Over the centuries, however, they start taking possession of corporeal bodies, and their tales of exile would eventually lay the foundations of many human myths and religions, as well as being the origin of the so-called demonic possession. The Second Age. After many hundreds of thousands of years of social evolution, the Second Age of mankind dawned around the year 5000 BC with the rise of the first known human civilization. The city-state empire of Babylon, founded in the area known as Mesopotamia between the banks of the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, would become widely considered by human scholars to be the cradle of civilization. During the 6th century, Owain Dantgwyn, a Welsh prince, adopts the battle name of Arthur and unites the kingdoms of Gwynedd and Powys before he is ultimately slain at the Battle of Camlan. Very few records of these events survive, yet the Arthurian legends that would grow up in the following centuries left a deep impression on human culture and civilization, well into the 23rd century. One such legend states that Arthur and his sword Excalibur would one day return in Earth's greatest hour of need. In 1412, a peasant girl named Jeanne d'Arc is born in the village of Domremy in northeastern France, a nation that was currently embroiled in a conflict later dubbed the 100 Years' War. In 1424, at the age of 12, Jeanne claimed to have begun hearing voices from God that told her to rid her country of the occupying English forces. By 1429, Jeanne, still just a girl and with no military training, successfully led her nation's armies against the invading English. She was eventually captured and burnt to death by the Church for heresy, though by the early 20th century she was to be posthumously canonized and declared a holy martyr. In 1456, a lone Drap called Dracul took up residence in the region of Wallachia to study the local humans and implanting several with keepers. The story of his activities pervaded in human culture for centuries afterwards before becoming merged with those of Vlad Tepes, a cruel and brutal prince of Wallachia who came to power during the same period. On January 7, 1610, the Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei first observed what will eventually become known as the moons Io, Europa, Ganymede and Callisto in orbit around Jupiter. In 1772, the Italian-born mathematician and astronomer Joseph Louis Lagrange discovers the stationary solutions of the circular restricted three-body problem, which become known as the Lagrangian points. In 1882, Frederick W.H. Myers, the founder of the Society for Psychical Research in London, first coins the term telepathy. In November 1888, the Vorlons return to Earth once more and find a man known as Mr. Sebastian in London, England. Sebastian had committed what would become a notorious string of mysterious murders in the East End district of Whitechapel. Deciding that this human could serve them, the Vorlons take him away, show him the error of his ways and preserve him to serve as an inquisitor. For the humans left behind, the murders and the identity of the killer would remain an unsolved mystery, though nobody would remember the name of Sebastian. In the centuries to come, there were few who would not heard of Jack the Ripper. In 2075, the Earth Alliance was founded by the countries of Australia, the United Kingdom, Canada, Ireland, the Netherlands, Japan, New Zealand, South Africa, and the United States as a political and economic association. In 2085, in the aftermath of World War III, its authority was extended and it became Earth's official government. The founding nations also made great gains in colonizing space by founding colonies and bases on Luna and Mars by 2090. A small number of sublight sleeper ships were sent into interstellar space. On April 7, 2156, the first official first contact between Earth and an alien race occurred when a ship from the Centauri Republic came across remote world and decided to open up trade with its eccentric pre-interstellar civilization. As the Sol system had no jump gate of its own, the Centauri built one in orbit of Earth and rented the use of their own gates, and for a price would even ferry Earth ships aboard their transports. Before long though, the Centauri sold the Earth Alliance the technology to build their own gates as well as jump-capable ships. Humanity quickly made use of faster-than-light travel, assimilated technology, explored space, and made contact with other species, thus establishing itself in the interstellar community. Its location in a relative unimportant, unused region of space gave the Earth Alliance the opportunity to expand its territory rapidly and establish many colonies in less than a century. After almost a century as an interstellar power, Earth came perilously close to being conquered following the disastrous first contact with the Minbari that precipitated the Earth-Minbari War, which saw Earth force beaten back all their way to the homeworld. At the final battle of the line, the overwhelming Minbari fleet short before totally annihilating Earth's population and devastating the planet suddenly ceased fire, and the Minbari Federation offered their surrender. The Third Age. In the following decades, Earth slowly turned inward as the psychological scars left by humanity's near extinction turned to paranoia and xenophobia. In 2259, EA President Morgan Clark took office following the assassination of his predecessor and pushed Earth further down this path, fostering fear and hatred of aliens and eventually declaring martial law, creating an oppressive police state in the name of planetary security. The regime's hold on power was eventually broken following a civil war initiated by the late General William Hague during the military coup of 2260 and finished with the liberation of Earth in November 2261. After Clark's suicide, acting EA President Susanna Luchenko agreed to join the new Interstellar Alliance, founded by Delenn and John Sheridan, who would lead the renegade liberation fleet against Clark's forces. In 2266, the Drakentire attempted to destroy Earth in the 5th anniversary of the Alliance, first by launching a leftover shadow death cloud and then, when it was destroyed, by dumping a biogenetic nanovirus dubbed the Drak Plague into the upper atmosphere. A planetary quarantine was immediately put into effect to prevent the plague from spreading, at least until a cure could be found. To that end, the Interstellar Alliance lent Earth the use of its most advanced starship, the Excalibur, outfitted with the very best equipment and facilities, and tasked the Anlashok to assist the Excalibur and its crew in hunting down any leads that might yield a cure. At this time, Earth had a population of 10 billion. By 2271, the plague was gone, though a limited quarantine was still in effect to guard against another contagion infecting the biosphere following tenfold increase in travel to ancient and little-known worlds in the wake of the Excalibur's explorations. In 2762, several isolationist nations on Earth, intent on breaking away from the Interstellar Alliance, precipitated a civil war against the Loyalist nations and the off-world colonies. The result of which was the Great Burn, a global cataclysm that devastated the entire surface of the planet. By 3262, the descendants of the survivors lived in a pre-industrial society, having long abandoned the ancient machines, blaming science and technology for the Great Burn. In the midst of all of this, the Anlashok returned to Earth in secret and slowly, over the course of centuries, helped the planet rebuild and rediscover all that was lost before returning to the stars. In the year 1,2262, an unknown force causes Sol to prematurely go nova, annihilating Earth. By that time, humanity had settled the old Vorlon homeworld and had dubbed it New Earth.